The chamber trembled, not from any weapon, not yet, but from the weight of what had just been said. A low hum pulsed through the crystalline walls of the Galactic Council's sanctum, a sprawling dome of light and shadow that hung in the void like a god's forgotten jewel. Hundreds of species sat in their tiered seats, their forms a chaotic tapestry of scales, feathers, and glowing tendrils. Eyes, some compound, some singular, some blind but all-seeing, fixed on the human envoy standing alone at the center. His name was Elias Kor, and he carried the kind of quiet that made the air feel like it was lying to you, hiding something jagged beneath its stillness. "You heard me," Elias said, his voice rough as gravel, cutting through the murmurs that rippled across the chamber. "Humanity's done playing by your rules. We've built something you can't ignore. Dark matter warships, faster than your fastest, stronger than your strongest, and they're already out there, waiting." The council erupted. A Skravith delegate, its 6 limbs thrashing like storm-whipped branches, screeched a protest in a language that sounded like glass shattering. A Lumora, its bioluminescent skin flaring red with indignation, rose and bellowed, "This is an outrage, a violation of the Concordance." Others joined the chorus, accusations, threats, pleas, but Elias didn't flinch. He stood there, hands clasped behind his back, his gray uniform creased but unyielding, like he'd walked out of a war zone and into their pristine little world without bothering to dust off the ash. I watched from the shadows, my heart hammering against my ribs. "My name's Talia Vren, and I wasn't supposed to be here. Not in the council chamber, not on this station, not anywhere near Elias Kor. I was a nobody, a maintenance tech with a knack for slipping through security grids, a human who'd spent her life scraping by on the fringes of the galaxy's glittering core. But I'd heard the rumors. We all had. Whispers of ships that didn't just bend space but tore it apart, fueled by something the Council had forbidden centuries ago. Dark matter. And when I'd seen Elias's shuttle dock, when I'd caught the hard edge in his eyes through a cracked viewport, I knew I had to follow him. I had to know if it was true. The High Arbiter, a towering figure draped in robes that shimmered like liquid starlight, raised a clawed hand. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. "Envoy Kor," it said, its voice a deep resonance that vibrated in my bones. "You speak of war. You bring chaos to a peace we have bled to maintain. Explain yourself, or the consequences will be dire." Elias tilted his head, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Peace? You call this peace? Your concordance is a leash, Arbiter. You've kept us small, kept us weak, while you hoard your tech and your worlds. Humanity's tired of begging for scraps. We've taken what's ours." The chamber held its breath. I edged closer, my boots silent on the polished floor, my pulse loud enough to betray me if anyone cared to listen. Elias wasn't wrong. I'd seen it. Earth's colonies choking on dust, children born with lungs too weak to breathe unfiltered air, all while the Council's favored races thrived on planets we'd never touch. But warships? Dark matter? That was a line no one had crossed. Not until now. The Arbiter leaned forward, its eyes narrowing to slits of cold light. "You claim power, but power without proof is noise. Show us, human. Show us these warships." Elias's smirk widened, and my stomach dropped. He raised a hand, and a hollow projector flickered to life above him. The image was grainy at first, then sharpened into something that stole the air from my lungs. A fleet. Dozens of ships, sleek and black as the void itself, their hulls rippling with an energy that didn't reflect light but swallowed it. They moved like predators, cutting through space with a grace that felt wrong, unnatural. The Council gasped, recoiled, some even prayed in their strange tongues. I couldn't look away. "These," Elias said, his voice low and dangerous, "are the Eclipse Legion, and they're not here to negotiate." The chamber exploded again, but this time it wasn't just noise. It was fear. Real, raw fear. I pressed myself against the wall, my mind racing. I'd wanted truth, and now I had it. Humanity wasn't just rising. We were clawing our way up, bloodied and furious, and we'd built monsters to do it. But as Elias stood there, unbowed, I couldn't shake the question gnawing at me. What happens when the monsters turn on us? The holo image of the Eclipse Legion hung in the air like a death sentence, its dark ships casting shadows that seemed to crawl across the chamber floor. The Galactic Council's outrage had melted into something uglier, panic laced with desperation. A Verk delegate, its insectoid mandibles clicking furiously, shrieked about sanctions, while a gelatinous Othrin pulsed warnings of annihilation. But Elias Kor didn't move, didn't blink. He just watched them unravel, his silence louder than their chaos. I couldn't breathe right. My chest felt tight, like the air itself was pressing down on me, and my hands shook as I gripped the edge of a maintenance panel I'd ducked behind. I'd seen plenty in my years. Riots on colony outposts, smugglers gutted over bad deals. But this was a reckoning. Humanity had always been the scrappy underdog, the species the Council patted on the head and sent back to its crumbling worlds. Now we were the ones baring teeth, and I didn't know if I should be proud or terrified. The High Arbiter's voice cut through the din, sharp as a blade. "You threaten the balance, Kor. You threaten us. If these ships are real, if they are as you claim, then you have ignited a fire that will consume your kind first." Elias laughed, a low, bitter sound that made my skin prickle. "Consume us? Arbiter, we've been burning for decades. You just didn't care to look. Your balance is a lie, and we're done pretending it's not." He stepped forward, his boots echoing in the sudden hush. "The Eclipse Legion isn't a threat, it's a promise. Step aside, or we'll carve our own path." I wanted to believe him. God, I did. I'd grown up on stories of Earth's defiance, how we'd clawed our way into the stars despite the odds, how we'd survived when every other species said we wouldn't. But there was something in his eyes, a hardness that went beyond defiance. It was hunger, cold and endless, and it scared me more than the Council's bluster ever could. A new voice broke the tension, smooth and oily, slithering into the silence. It was Counselor Zethra, a serpentine clitherin with scales that glinted like polished obsidian. "And what of the cost, human?" she hissed, her forked tongue flicking the air. "Dark matter is forbidden for a reason. It's unstable. It corrupts. Have you not considered what your toys might do to your own people?" Elias turned to her, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something. Anger, maybe, or doubt. It was gone as fast as it came. "The cost?" he said. "The cost was paid by the millions who died while you sat here debating our worth. We've mastered it. That's all you need to know." Mastered it. The words hung there, heavy and untested. I didn't know much about dark matter, just scraps I'd overheard from engineers and smugglers. It was the stuff of nightmares, a force that could bend reality but break it just as easily. The Council had banned it after the Cataclysm, a war that left entire systems as lifeless husks. If Elias was lying, if we hadn't mastered it, then Zethra was right. We'd be the first to burn. The Arbiter raised its hand again, and the holo flickered out, plunging the chamber into a dim, uneasy glow. "Enough," it said. "You have made your declaration, Envoy Kor. Now we will make ours. The Council will convene. You will wait." Elias nodded, a curt dip of his head, and turned to leave. The chamber buzzed as he walked out, his steps deliberate, unhurried. I should have stayed put, kept my head down like always, but I couldn't. I slipped through a service hatch, my heart pounding as I trailed him into the station's labyrinthine corridors. I had to know more, had to see what he'd do next. He didn't go far. In a shadowed alcove, he stopped, staring at a comm device in his hand. I crept closer, close enough to hear the crackle of a voice on the other end. "Core, it's done," it said, low and urgent. "The Legion's in position. First strike's ready. Your call." Elias didn't answer right away. He just stood there, his jaw tight, his fingers hovering over the device. Then he muttered, "Not yet. Let them sweat." He killed the comm and leaned against the wall, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath for years. I froze, my mind racing. First strike? Against who? The Council? A species? Us? I didn't know Elias Core, didn't know what drove him. But in that moment, I saw it. The weight of a choice that could end everything. And I realized something worse. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was part of this, whether I wanted to be or not. The corridor felt colder after Elias's words, like the station itself was holding its breath. I pressed myself into the shadows, my back against the frigid metal wall, watching him through the dim flicker of a dying light panel. He didn't move for a long time, just stood there, head bowed, the comm device dangling in his hand like a loaded gun. I could still hear that voice echoing in my skull. "First strike's ready. Your call?" It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was real, and it was close, and I didn't know if I'd stumbled into history or a massacre. I should have run, should have slipped back through the ducts, found a transport off this floating tomb, and buried myself in some backwater colony where no one would care about my name. But my feet wouldn't move. Something about Elias Core held me there. Maybe the way he carried himself, like a man who'd already lost everything and had nothing left to fear. Or maybe it was the questions clawing at me. Who was he striking? Why? And how the hell had humanity gone from scavengers to this? He shifted suddenly, pocketing the comm, and I flinched, my boot scraping the floor. The sound was tiny, a whisper in the hum of the station, but his head snapped toward me like a predator locking on to prey. "Who's there?" His voice was low, sharp, a blade unsheathed. Panic hit me like a punch. I bolted, ducking into a side passage, my breath ragged as I wove through the maze of pipes and conduits I'd spent years memorizing. Footsteps pounded behind me, steady, relentless. He wasn't yelling, wasn't calling for guards. He was hunting me himself, and that scared me more than anything. I rounded a corner and slammed into a dead end, a rusted bulkhead blocking my path. My hands scrabbled at it, searching for a latch, a seam, anything, but it was solid. The footsteps stopped, and I turned, heart in my throat, to see Elias standing there, silhouetted against the faint light. His gray eyes pinned me in place, cold and unreadable. "You're human," he said, not a question. He stepped closer, and I caught the faint scar running down his jaw, the kind you get from shrapnel or a fight you barely survived. "What's a human doing skulking around a council station?" My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. "I work here. Maintenance. I saw you in the chamber. I had to know." He studied me, his gaze cutting through the lies I hadn't even told yet. "Know what?" "If it's true," I blurted. "The warships, the Eclipse Legion, what you're planning?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned against the wall, crossing his arms, like we were having a casual chat instead of a standoff. "And what do you think I'm planning, maintenance girl?" "My name's Talia," I snapped, anger flaring past the fear. "And I think you're about to start a war we can't win. You're playing with something, dark matter, that could rip us apart before it ever touches them." His lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You're half right. It's a war. But we can win it. We have to." "Why?" The word came out raw, almost a plea. What's worth risking everything?" He looked away then, and for the first time, I saw something crack in that iron facade. Something tired, something human. "Because they've already taken everything," he said quietly. "Earth's dying, Talia. Not in 100 years, not in 50. Now the Council knows it. They've known for decades, and they've done nothing." I stared at him, the weight of it sinking in. I'd seen the reports, colonies failing, air turning toxic, but I'd thought it was neglect, not a death sentence. "So this is revenge?" "No." His voice hardened again, steel snapping back into place. "It's survival. The Legion isn't just weapons, it's ships, colony ships. We're taking what they won't give us. Worlds, resources, a future I wanted to argue, to say there had to be another way, but the words stuck in my throat. I'd seen too much. Families starving, ships turned away from Council ports. If he was right, if Earth was really gone, then maybe this was all we had left. But that didn't make it less insane. Before I could respond, his comm buzzed again. He pulled it out, and the same voice crackled through. "Core, they're moving. Council scrambling fighters. We need your orders now." Elias glanced at me, then back at the comm. "Hold position," he said. "I'm coming." He pocketed it and straightened, fixing me with a look that felt like a warning. "You're in this now, Talia. Run or follow. Your choice." He turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the dark, my mind screaming one question. What the hell had I just stepped into? I stood there in the dark, Elias's footsteps fading into the hum of the station, and it felt like the universe was splitting under my feet. Run or follow. That's what he'd said, like it was simple, like I could just pick a side and not look back. But running meant going back to the life I'd always known. Crawling through ducts, fixing leaks, pretending the galaxy wasn't chewing us up and spitting us out. Following meant stepping into whatever madness he was dragging us toward. A war I didn't understand, with weapons I couldn't trust. My hands clenched into fists, nails biting into my palms, and I cursed under my breath. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't a hero. I was just Talia Vren, a girl who'd learned to survive by keeping her head down. So why the hell was I moving? My legs carried me after him before my brain caught up, boots pounding the metal floor, my breath ragged in my throat. I didn't know what I was chasing. Answers, maybe, or just a chance to see this through, but I couldn't stop. The corridor twisted ahead, lights flickering like they were mocking me, and I caught sight of Elias just as he reached a docking bay hatch. He didn't turn, didn't slow, but something told me he knew I was there. He punched a code into the panel, and the hatch hissed open, revealing a sleek, unmarked shuttle that looked too human for this alien station. "Last chance," he said without looking back. "You step through, there's no undoing it." I hesitated, my heart slamming against my ribs. "And if I don't?" "Then you're a ghost on a dying world," he said, stepping inside. "Your call." That hit harder than I expected. A ghost. That's what I'd been, wasn't it? Drifting through life, invisible, waiting for the end to creep up quiet and slow. I thought of my sister, Mara, back on Earth's outer colonies. Her coughs getting worse every year, her letters shorter, emptier. If Elias was right, if Earth was choking out its last breaths, then staying here was just waiting for her to fade. I gritted my teeth and followed him in. The shuttle's interior was stark. Gray walls, a pilot's console, a few crates strapped down tight. Elias slid into the pilot's seat, hands moving over the controls with a precision that spoke of years, maybe decades, behind a helm. I hovered near the door, feeling out of place, like a kid who'd wandered into a war room. "Strap in," he said, not glancing up. "We're not sightseeing." I fumbled with the harness on a jump seat, my fingers clumsy as the engines hummed to life. The shuttle lurched, and through the viewport, I saw the station's bay doors peel open, revealing the black expanse beyond. Stars glittered, cold and distant, but there was something else out there. Shapes moving in the void, too fast, too dark. My stomach twisted. The Eclipse Legion. They were real and they were close. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "To the Revenant," he said. "Flagship. You want answers? You'll get them there." The shuttle shot forward, and the station shrank behind us, a fragile speck against the endless dark. I gripped the harness, my mind racing. The Revenant. I'd heard rumors, whispers of a ship that didn't just fight, but devoured, a monster born from humanity's rage, and now I was hurtling toward it, toward a fleet that could rewrite everything or burn it all down. Elias's comm crackled again. "Core, Council fighters are launching. They're locking onto our signals. Orders?" "Engage cloaks," he said, his voice calm, almost bored. "Let them chase ghosts." "Copy. Cloaks up. They're blind." The line went dead. I stared at him. "Cloaks? You mean—" "Dark matter fields," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "Bends light, scrambles sensors. They won't see us until we want them to." I swallowed hard. That kind of tech wasn't just advanced. It was impossible, or it was supposed to be. How did we even build this? "Desperation," he said, turning back to the controls, "and a few good minds who stopped caring about rules." The viewport shifted as we approached the fleet, and my breath caught. The Revenant loomed ahead, massive and jagged, its hull a void that swallowed the starlight around it. Smaller ships flanked it, their forms rippling like heat waves, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. This wasn't just a fleet. It was a declaration, a fist raised against the galaxy. Elias guided the shuttle into a docking bay, and as the clamps locked us in, he stood, fixing me with that same hard stare. "Welcome to the fight, Talia. Hope you're ready." I wasn't, not even close, but as the hatch opened and I stepped onto the Revenant's deck, I knew there was no turning back now. The Revenant's docking bay swallowed us whole, a cavern of steel and shadow that smelled of ozone and sweat. The air buzzed with activity. Crews in patched uniforms darted between crates, their voices clipped and urgent, while the low thrum of machinery pulsed like a heartbeat. I stepped out behind Elias, my boots clanging on the grated floor, and felt like I'd walked into a storm that was just waiting to break. These weren't the polished soldiers of council vids or the sleek drones of their fleets. These were people, gritty, tired, human, and they moved with a purpose that made my skin prickle. Elias didn't pause, didn't explain. He strode forward, barking orders to a wiry tech who saluted and scrambled off. I trailed him, my eyes darting everywhere, past the weld scars on the walls, the dark matter conduits snaking overhead like veins, the faint glow of holoscreens flickering with data I couldn't read. This wasn't just a ship. It was a fortress, a weapon, a lifeline. And I was starting to see why Elias had called it survival. "You gonna keep gawking? Or you got something useful to say?" He tossed over his shoulder, not breaking stride. I bristled, jogging to catch up. "I'm here, aren't I? Maybe start with why you're dragging me into this instead of leaving me back there." He stopped so suddenly I almost crashed into him. He turned, his gray eyes boring into mine, and for a second I thought he'd sent me packing. "You followed me, Talia. I didn't drag you anywhere. You want out? There's the hatch. But if you're staying, you're not just a passenger. Not on this ship." I opened my mouth to argue, then shut it. He was right. I'd made the choice, stupid as it might have been. "Fine," I said. "What do you need?" He jerked his head toward a corridor. "Come with me. You'll see." We moved deeper into the Revenant, the noise of the bay fading into a tense quiet. The halls narrowed, the air growing heavier, and I caught glimpses of crew, some young, some old, all with that same hard edge in their eyes. A woman with a prosthetic arm nodded at Elias as we passed. A kid, barely 16, hauled a crate twice his size without a word. These weren't just fighters. They were survivors. People who'd lost too much to care about fear. Elias led me to a command deck, a circular room ringed with screens and dominated by a massive hollow table. A dozen officers stood around it, their faces taut as they studied a projection of the sector. Council stations blinking red, the Eclipse Legion's ships pulsing black. A woman with short-cropped hair and a scar across her cheek glanced up as we entered. "Corps," she said, her voice rough. "They're deploying more fighters, 3 squadrons closing fast." "Numbers?" Elias asked, stepping to the table. 40, maybe 50. Light craft, but they've got disruptors. They'll try to pin us." Elias nodded, his jaw tight. "Cloaks holding?" "For now," she said, "but if they get a lock, we're lit up." I hovered near the edge, my pulse racing. 40 fighters against this fleet? It sounded like suicide. For them, not us. But the tension in the room told me it wasn't that simple. I cleared my throat, feeling every eye snap to me. What's the plan?" The scarred woman raised an eyebrow, but Elias cut in. "We don't run," he said. "We hit first. The Legion's built to take the fight to them, not wait it out." "Hit them?" I echoed, incredulous. "You're talking about starting a war right now?" "It's already started," he said, his voice flat. "The Council's been bleeding us dry for years. This—" He gestured at the hollow table, the ships, the room. "This is us bleeding them back." I stared at him, then at the officers, their faces grim but resolute. I wanted to scream that this was insane, that we couldn't just charge into a galactic superpower with a handful of ships, dark matter or not. But then I thought of Mara again, her last letter, the way she'd signed it with a shaky hand, and the words died in my throat. If this was survival, maybe it was worth the madness. Before I could say anything, an alarm blared, red lights flashing across the deck. "Contact!" someone shouted. "Council fighters inbound, 5 minutes!" Elias didn't flinch. He leaned over the table, his voice calm as ice. "All ships, battle stations, target their lead squadron, dark matter cannons full charge." The room erupted into motion, orders flying, screens lighting up with trajectories and power readings. I stumbled back, my heart hammering, as the Revenant shuddered beneath us, its engines roaring to life. Elias glanced at me, just for a second, and there was something in his eyes, regret, maybe, or resolve. "Hold on, Talia," he said. "It's about to get loud." And then the first cannon fired, and the galaxy shook. The Revenant trembled as the dark matter cannon unleashed its fury, a deep, bone-rattling boom that drowned out the alarms. I grabbed the edge of the hollow table to steady myself, my eyes locked on the viewport as a streak of black energy tore through the void. It hit the lead council squadron like a fist through glass, ships disintegrating into silent bursts of light, debris scattering like ash. The officers around me didn't cheer. They just watched, faces hard, hands moving over controls with grim precision. Elias stood at the center, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Second salvo now!" Target their flankers. Another shudder, another lance of darkness, and more fighters vanished. I couldn't look away, couldn't breathe. This wasn't war like I'd imagined. Clean, distant, heroic. It was slaughter, raw and ugly, and we were the ones wielding the blade. The scarred woman, Captain Riza, I'd heard someone call her, snapped. "They're breaking formation, scattered signals, 10 left." Her voice held an edge of triumph, but Elias didn't relax. He leaned closer to the hollow table, eyes narrowing at the flickering red dots. "They're not retreating," he muttered. They're calling for backup. My stomach dropped. Backup? I said, louder than I meant. You mean more are coming? He didn't answer, just nodded to Reza. Get the Wraith Inspector in position. We're not waiting for their reinforcements. I wanted to scream at him, ask how he could be so calm when we'd just kicked a hornet's nest, but the deck lurched again, and I swallowed it down. The viewport showed the Eclipse Legion shifting, ships sliding through space like shadows, their cloaks rippling as they flanked the remaining fighters. Another blast, and the last of the squadron was gone. Silence fell, heavy and wrong, broken only by the hum of the ship. Elias turned to me, his expression unreadable. You wanted to know what we're doing. This is it. We hit hard, we take what's ours, and we don't stop. For how long? I shot back, my voice shaking. Until they send a fleet we can't outrun? Until we don't have to run, he said, and there was something in his tone. Pain, maybe, buried deep. Earth's gone, Talia. Not dying. Gone. The Council let it rot. This is all we've got left. I stared at him, the weight of it crashing down. Gone. Mara's face flashed in my mind, her thin smile, her fragile hope, and I felt something break inside me. You're sure? I whispered. He nodded just once. I saw it, nothing left but dust. Before I could process that, Reza's voice cut in. Core, long-range sensors, Council Dreadnought, inbound, ETA 20 minutes. Elias's jaw tightened. Full power to engines. We're not fighting that today. He looked at me again, softer this time. You're still here? Why? I didn't have an answer, just a hollow ache and a fire I couldn't name. Because I have to be, I said. And as the Revenant surged forward, I knew it was true. The Revenant roared through the void, engines screaming as we pulled away from the wreckage of the Council fighters. The holotable flickered with updates, red blips multiplying in the distance, the Dreadnought's signal growing stronger, a hulking predator sniffing out our trail. I stood rooted to the command deck, my hands gripping the edge of a console, the taste of bile sharp in my throat. Elias's words echoed in my skull, Earth's gone. And I couldn't shake the image of Mara, her last letter crumpled in my pocket back on the station, now a relic of a world that didn't exist anymore. I wanted to hate him for saying it, for making it real, but all I felt was a numb, gnawing void where my anger should have been. Status, Elias barked, his voice steady as ever, like we weren't running from a ship that could crack us open with one shot. Reza swiped at her screen, her scarred face lit by the glow. Cloaks at 80%. Dreadnoughts still scanning. Haven't locked us yet, but they're closing. 12 minutes. Push the engines, he said. Divert power from secondary systems if you have to. A young officer, barely older than the kid I'd seen hauling crates, piped up, his voice cracking. Sir, that'll strain the dark matter core. We could... Do it, Elias cut him off, not even glancing his way. The kid hesitated, then obeyed, and the ship groaned under the surge, a deep vibration rattling my bones. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. What happens if they catch us? I asked, stepping closer to Elias. That dreadnought, it's not some patrol boat. It'll tear through us. He didn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the holotable. It won't catch us. You don't know that. My voice rose, sharp and ragged, drawing stares from the crew. You're gambling with all of us, hundreds of people, maybe thousands. For what? To prove a point? He turned then, slow and deliberate, and the weight of his stare pinned me in place. Not a point, he said, low and fierce. A chance. You think I want this? You think I woke up one day and decided to burn everything down? I didn't choose this war, Talia. It chose us when the Council turned its back. I wanted to argue, to tell him there had to be another way. But the memory of Earth, dust, he'd said, choked me silent. I thought of the colonies I'd worked on, the kids with hollow eyes, the air filters that failed year after year. If he was right, if it was all gone, then what was left but this? Still, the dreadnought loomed in my mind, a shadow I couldn't outrun. Reza's voice broke the tension. 9 minutes. They're pinging harder. Cloaks dropping to 65. Elias cursed under his breath, then turned to the comms officer. Signal the Wraith and Spectre. Tell them to break off, flank wide, and draw fire if they have to. We need breathing room. The officer nodded, relaying the order, and I felt a pang of guilt. Those ships, more humans, more lives, were bait now, all to keep the Revenant alive. I wondered who was on them, what they'd left behind, but there was no time to dwell. The deck shuddered again, harder this time, and a warning light flared red on Reza's console. "Core's overheating," she said, her tone clipped. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before it vents or blows." Elias didn't flinch. "Reroute coolant, buy us time." I couldn't take it anymore. "And then what?" I snapped. "We're running on fumes, Elias. Even if we dodge this thing, where do we go? What's the plan?" He met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw a crack in that iron wall, a flicker of something raw, almost desperate. "There's a system," he said. "Uncharted, 3 jumps from here. Worlds we can take, rebuild on. That's where we're headed. That's the plan." I blinked, caught off guard. "Rebuild? You mean colonies? This whole fleet? It's not just for fighting?" "It's for living," he said, quieter now. "But we have to get there first." Before I could process that, the ship jolted violently, throwing me against the console. Alarms screamed, and Reza shouted, "They've got a partial lock! Disruptor wave incoming!" Elias grabbed the table, his voice rising over the chaos. "Evasive pattern now! Full power to shields!" The Revenant twisted, a sickening lurch that sent my stomach into my throat, and through the viewport, I saw it. A ripple of energy tearing through space, grazing us, lighting up the dark. The shields held, barely, but the core warning blared louder. 6 minutes, Reza said. 6 minutes until we were either free or dead. I looked at Elias, his face set like stone, and realized something terrifying. He wasn't sure we'd make it, not really, but he'd fight anyway. Because he had to, because we all did. And as the dreadnought closed in, I knew I was in too deep to do anything but fight with him. The Revenant screamed through the void, a wounded beast clawing for freedom as the Council dreadnought's disruptor waves lit up the dark behind us. The command deck was a storm of noise, alarms shrieking, officers shouting, the Corps' warning pulsing red like a heartbeat on the edge of failure. I clung to the console, my knuckles white, my eyes darting between the holotable and the viewport where death loomed closer every second. Elias stood at the center of it all, his voice a lifeline in the chaos, barking orders with a calm that felt like defiance against the inevitable. "Jump drive status," he yelled, his hands braced on the table as the ship shuddered again. "Charging!" the young officer shouted back, his face slick with sweat. 80%, 90, we're almost there." "Almost isn't enough," Reza snapped, her fingers flying over her controls. "Core's at critical. 3 minutes, maybe less, before it vents. Dreadnoughts at 4. I felt the math like a punch. 3 minutes to live, 4 to die. My chest tightened, and I looked at Elias, searching for something, anything to hold on to. He met my gaze, just for a heartbeat, and I saw it again. That flicker of doubt, buried under the steel. He wasn't a god, wasn't a savior. He was just a man, betting everything on a roll of the dice, and I'd followed him into the gamble. "Divert all power to the drive," he said, his voice low but unyielding. "Shields, weapons, lights, everything. Get us that jump." The crew hesitated, a collective intake of breath, then obeyed. The deck dimmed, screens winking out, the hum of secondary systems fading to silence. The Revenant felt naked, exposed, but the jump drive's indicator spiked. 95, 98. I held my breath, counting seconds I couldn't track, as the dreadnought's shadow grew in the viewport, its weapons glowing hot with the promise of obliteration. "Jump ready," the officer cried, and Elias didn't waste a second. "Now!" The universe folded. One moment I was staring at our end, a wall of light and fire bearing down. Then nothing. A lurch, a scream of metal, a sensation like being pulled inside out, and the viewport went black. Silence hit, heavier than the chaos, and for a terrifying second I thought we'd failed, that the core had blown, that we were dead. Then the screens flickered back, and a new starfield swam into view. Unfamiliar, wild, untouched. "We made it," Reza breathed, her voice ragged with disbelief. "First jump clear, 2 more to go." The crew erupted. Shouts, laughter, a few sobs. But Elias didn't join them. He straightened, exhaling slow, and turned to the holotable, already plotting the next move. I watched him, my legs shaky as I pushed off the console, and something clicked into place. This wasn't victory, not yet. It was a reprieve, a chance to keep running, keep fighting. But it was something. "Talia," he said, not looking up. "You still with me?" I swallowed, my throat dry. "Yeah," I said, quieter than I meant. "I'm here." He nodded just once, and I knew he'd heard the weight in it. The grief for Earth, for Mara, for everything we'd lost. But there was no time to mourn, not now. The Wraith and Spectre signaled in, battered but alive, and the fleet regrouped, limping toward the second jump. The dreadnought was gone, for now, but the Council wouldn't stop. They'd hunt us, chase us to the edge of the galaxy if they had to, and we'd keep going, because that's what humans did. Hours later, after the third jump, we reached it, the uncharted system Elias had promised. The viewport filled with a sight that stole my breath. A blue-green planet, swirling with clouds, orbiting a steady yellow star. It wasn't Earth, couldn't be, but it was alive, real, a place to start again. The crew gathered, silent, staring at what might be home, and I felt tears prick my eyes, anger, relief, hope, all tangled together. Elias stood beside me, his voice soft for the first time. "Worth it?" I thought of the cost, the lives lost, the war we'd ignited, the sister I'd never see again. Then I looked at the planet, at the people around me, their faces lit with something I hadn't seen in years. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but it's a chance." He didn't reply, just stared out at the world we'd fought for. The Revenant settled into orbit, the Eclipse Legion arrayed behind it, and I knew this wasn't the end. The Council would come sooner or later, and we'd have to fight again. But for now, we'd won something. Time, a foothold, a spark. Humanity wasn't done. Not yet. As the first shuttles launched toward the surface, I made a choice. I'd stay with the Revenant, with Elias, with this ragged band of survivors. Not because I trusted him, or even believed in him, but because I believed in us. We'd shaken the galaxy to its core, and we weren't finished shaking it yet. For over 400 years, Earth had been silent. The blue planet that once screamed its presence into the galaxy with war, music, science, and fire had gone dark. Abandoned, quarantined, and all but erased from the galactic maps. The rest of the universe breathed easier when humanity vanished. They called it a mercy. Some said Earth had destroyed itself. Others claimed the humans had evolved into something else entirely. But the truth? The truth was buried beneath dust and rubble, beneath the scorched skies and broken satellites of a planet that refused to die. And now, something was waking up. Deep beneath the surface of the Andes Mountains, hidden inside an ancient vault surrounded by decaying metal and forgotten AI, a heartbeat returned. Mechanical and human all at once. The pulse echoed through broken cables and dormant servers until it reached the core, a chamber bathed in cold blue light. The Guardian had awakened. He didn't remember his name at first. Just pain. A heavy, aching kind of sorrow that sat deep in his chest like old bones. He opened his eyes slowly, lids parting after centuries of sleep. The ceiling above was cracked. Vines had forced their way inside, wrapping around rusted steel. Nature had claimed the world, but not him. Not yet. The Guardian rose from the cradle that had kept him alive through time itself. His joints cracked and popped with unnatural stiffness. His body was more metal than flesh now, part of the last human defense initiative that never launched. Project Styx, Sentinel Terminal for Yielded Xenocide. He had volunteered to become the weapon Earth would never use unless it had no other choice. Well, that choice had been made long ago. A static voice crackled through the stale air. Subject 0, confirm cognition, confirm awakening. He didn't answer. Not right away. Memories slammed into him like a freight train. War, fire, the Orion siege, the Council of Nine declaring Earth as too dangerous to be left unchecked. And finally, the Great Silencing, when every orbital defense system went offline at once. Someone had betrayed them, someone from within. Cognition confirmed, he said finally, voice low and hoarse, almost robotic. Good, the AI replied. Threat level has reached Omega Black. Galactic Council forces are inbound. They are unaware Earth is reactivating. Mission parameters: survive, defend, and retaliate. He clenched his fists. Something deep inside him stirred. Something old and angry. Not just survival, not just defense. Retribution. Outside, the stars burned cold. Somewhere far from Earth, in the heart of the Triangulum sector, a council fleet of 17 ships drifted toward what they believed was just a dead planet. The admiral aboard the flagship Aurak's 7 smirked as he looked at the old mission files. Humanity, he scoffed. They always thought they were special, but in the end, they vanished like everyone else who played God. But Earth wasn't dead. And the Guardian was no god. He was something worse. The warning beacons were still down. No one in the fleet noticed the spike in geothermal energy from South America. No one saw the launch of the first orbital drone, cloaked in stealth tech 1,000 years ahead of its time. No one heard the ancient war sirens howl beneath the oceans. But soon, they would. The Guardian stood in the ruined vault, naked but alive. He reached for the case marked with the old sigil of Earth Command, a broken eagle with flames for wings. Inside, armor that had been forged with the blood of 100 fallen engineers. He stepped into it, piece by piece, each click and hiss of metal sealing the past back into place. He was human, he was weapon, and he was awake. The Guardian stepped out of the vault into a world that barely resembled the Earth he once knew. Trees as tall as skyscrapers towered over the ruins of cities. Nature had swallowed everything man had built. Skulls lay half buried in moss. Concrete roads were cracked open like broken bones. Yet somehow, in all this wild beauty, a cold silence hung in the air. There were no voices, no laughter, just wind, just ghosts. He paused at the edge of a collapsed overpass, eyes scanning the distant skyline of what used to be Bogota. Vines wrapped around skeletal high-rises. Drones, old Earth models, some rusted into statues, hung lifeless from tangled cables. Even the air felt different, thinner somehow, as if the planet itself hadn't quite forgiven what had been done to it. The AI in his armor, designation Warden, clicked softly in his ear. Multiple heat signatures detected underground, non-human, movement patterns inconsistent with Earth fauna. The Guardian narrowed his eyes. Scouts? Possibly. Probes sent from approaching fleet. Analysis suggests they are here to confirm extinction. Then we'll disappoint them. He dropped into a crouch, the impact shaking dust from the concrete. In moments, he disappeared into the jungle that had grown over the city, moving like a shadow through branches and rust. Every step he took woke up something old, something hidden. Deep beneath a ruined metro station, 3 alien scouts moved in silence. Their exosuits hissed softly with every step, long limbs scanning with pulsating blue lights. They weren't soldiers. They didn't need to be. Earth was supposed to be dead. Then something flickered. One of the scouts turned sharply. Energy signature detected. Carbon fusion source. Impossible. No Earth tech should be active. Before the others could respond, a shape exploded from above, metal and fury wrapped in silence. The Guardian landed hard, his blade punching through the first scout's spine before it could scream. The second raised a plasma rifle, but it was already too late. A blast of kinetic energy from the Guardian's left arm shattered the creature's chest. The third tried to run. It didn't get far. Within seconds, it lay motionless on the concrete, black blood leaking into the cracks. 3 down, Warden confirmed, voice calm. More will come. They know now. The Guardian knelt by one of the corpses. He pried open the helmet, revealing the twisted face of a Durrell, an insectoid race that had been part of the Council's execution squad during Earth's final days. He remembered them well. They had burned New Delhi, gutted London, smiled while Earth screamed. They remember us as monsters, he said quietly. Warden responded coldly, then let them be reminded why. Back aboard the RX-7, the Council Admiral leaned forward in his chair. We've lost contact with 3 scouts. A younger officer beside him blinked. System glitch? Number something's active down there. Something old. Another officer, pale and shaking, whispered what no one wanted to say. What if it's them? The Admiral laughed bitterly. It's not. The humans are gone. But even as he said it, warning lights began to flash. Incoming transmission, encrypted, ancient, and unmistakably human. The ship's systems struggled to decode it, lines of corrupted language flashing like static. Then, through the noise, a voice, low, hollow, full of fire. You came back. You shouldn't have. The Admiral stood slowly, face draining of color. What the hell was that? Another voice replied, this time from the ship's AI. Cold, robotic, certain. Guardian-class response unit detected. Earth defense protocols reactivated. The Admiral turned to his crew. Full alert. Launch all drones, scramble fighters. If there's even one of them left, we burn the planet again. But this time, Earth was ready. And it had a name. Rain began to fall over the broken bones of Bogota, heavy and dark, like the sky was bleeding. The Guardian stood atop the old communications tower, watching as streaks of silver light burned through the atmosphere. Drop pods. Thousands of them. Council assault units descending from orbit like a rain of fire. They weren't waiting to confirm Earth's death anymore. They were coming to make sure it stayed dead. Warden spoke in a crisp, even tone. 17 ships have entered low orbit. Estimated 2,000 troops deploying in phases. Main objective, secure the planet's core and eliminate all resistance. Resistance, the Guardian muttered. They still think there's more of us. Warden paused for a millisecond. There could be. The Guardian turned. Explain. Multiple dormant facilities detected worldwide. Cryopods, weapon caches, deep bunkers sealed since the collapse. Some show signs of integrity, others may have survivors. A flicker of hope sparked and immediately burned. He remembered the last day clearly. Screams across continents. Families turned to ash. Earth's last soldiers torn apart by orbital strikes while the Council watched from above. He had been frozen not as a soldier, but as a contingency plan. A nightmare kept in a box, but maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone. Mark the sites. Prioritize the ones closest to activation. Confirmed. He turned toward the smoking sky. Council pods were slamming into the ground miles away, kicking up towers of fire. Trees burst into flame. Birds scattered into the night. War had returned to Earth. So had vengeance. On the outer edge of the Amazon basin, the first Council assault team deployed into the jungle. 6 squads. All armed with pulse weapons and neural drones. The leader, a Crevarian named Commander Shath, stepped onto the mossy ground with contempt. "This world is filth," he sneered. "Let's finish what the stars started." His helmet HUD flickered for a second. A brief static interference, almost like a heartbeat. He waved it off. "Deploy the searchers. If anything's moving down here, I want it dead." They didn't realize they were being watched. In the trees, high above, the Guardian moved like a ghost. His armor adjusted to the environment, blending in with bark and leaf. Every breath he took synced with the forest's rhythm. He was calm, focused, deadly. Warden's voice echoed in his ear. "Target identified, Commander Shath. High value, oversaw orbital strikes on Southeast Asia. Publicly executed surrendered civilians. No war crimes trial issued." "Noted," the Guardian growled. "He dies first." A second later, chaos exploded. A blast of energy shot from the tree line, ripping through 2 soldiers before they could react. The others turned, confused, but shadows moved between them, fast and silent. One was dragged into the underbrush, another was crushed against a tree. Shath turned in circles, barking orders, but the jungle swallowed his voice. The Guardian emerged, coated in ash and blood. "Hello, Commander." Shath raised his rifle and fired. The bolt bounced off the Guardian's armor like water off stone. He tried to run, but a spear of pure plasma impaled him from behind. The Guardian stepped forward, pulled it out slowly, and looked him in the eyes. "This is for Manila." He twisted. Shath died without a scream. Warden spoke again. "Incoming transmission. Encrypted. Origin, Earth facility, New Zealand sector." The Guardian's breath caught. "Survivors?" he asked. "Possibly. Activation ping. Old Earth military signature. They are waking up." He turned to the stars above, where the Council ships circled like vultures. "You wanted the last war," he whispered. "You're going to get it." His armor hummed, his weapons recharged, and Earth, silent for so long, began to roar once more. The facility in New Zealand was never meant to be found. It was buried beneath the southern Alps, masked by tectonic distortion fields and wrapped in layers of ice and coded silence. It hadn't broadcast a signal in centuries, not since the final blackout. But now, for the first time in 412 years, it had pinged back. Inside its frozen halls, ancient lights flickered on. The floors shook slightly as geothermal energy surged through dormant systems. Robotic arms moved in the dark, clearing dust from control panels. Cryochambers hissed and steamed, long-forgotten names glowing faintly on their monitors. The Guardian stood before the reinforced entrance, snow whipping around him like angry spirits. His armor steamed from the trek up the mountainside. He pressed a hand to the console. "Warden. Running decryption now. Biometric lock, authorized. Facility name, ARC-9. Last entry log, March 4th, 2213. Population, 47 cryo survivors, mostly military." Status? Unknown. The door opened with a long, metallic groan. Inside, it was cold and silent, almost peaceful. The Guardian walked slowly down the central hallway, his footsteps echoing off steel and frost. Rows of cryo-chambers lined the walls. He moved to the nearest one, wiping off the frost. A woman's face, pale, eyes closed, perfectly still. Major Isla Tran. He remembered her. Commander of the Pacific Resistance, one of the last to go under right before the Council glassed Tokyo. She had fought to the bitter end, never surrendering, never breaking. Vitals? He asked. Stable, Warden confirmed. Minimal brain degradation. Pod integrity holding. Revival possible. The Guardian nodded. Begin wake-up sequence. The pod hissed, lights turning orange. Systems purged cryofluid. Ayla's chest began to rise. Her eyelids fluttered. He stood silently, watching her return from the dead. Then, her eyes snapped open, and she screamed. A reflexive panic kicked in. Her hand slammed against the pod walls, body shaking, lungs gasping for air. She thrashed until her eyes finally focused on the figure standing before her. Recognition dawned slowly. Zero? She rasped, voice dry and broken. Is it really you? Yes, he said softly. You're safe. She coughed, sitting up. Safe? On Earth? Are you insane? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he helped her out of the pod. Her legs barely held her weight. Others? She asked. 47. You're the first. Warden chimed in. Initiating mass revival. Estimated time 5 minutes. Stand by. Isla steadied herself, looking around at the still sleeping chambers. We weren't supposed to wake up unless... The Council is back, the Guardian said. Her face darkened. They're not just watching this time, he continued. They're here, on the ground. I've already killed 2 scout teams and a commander. They know something's active. Ayla clenched her fists. Then it's time to remind them what Earth can do. Slowly, one by one, the pods began to open. Soldiers, engineers, tacticians, ghosts of humanity's last defense. They emerged into the cold with wild eyes and raw memories. Some cried. Others vomited. A few dropped to their knees and prayed. The Guardian stood in the middle of them all, silent. You're all that's left, he said. The world has changed, but the enemy hasn't. The Council's fleet is in orbit. Their boots are on our soil. They thought Earth would stay buried. They thought we would forget. Ayla stepped beside him, voice stronger now. We didn't forget. We endured, and now we fight. Someone in the crowd shouted, What do we have to fight with? Sticks and memories. The Guardian raised his hand. A hologram burst to life. Schematics, weapon caches, satellite weapons that still orbited above, cloaked and waiting. You have me, he said. And you have vengeance. Warden's voice interrupted. Warning, orbital strike signatures detected. The Council is targeting this facility. Ayla looked around. We just woke up. They want us dead before we remember how to kill, the Guardian replied. He turned to the crowd. You have 3 minutes to gear up. After that, we go underground. And above, in the sky, fire began to fall again. The first blast hit just outside the facility, a white-hot beam of plasma that turned a mountainside into molten rock. The ground buckled, ice cracked like thunder. The once peaceful peaks erupted into chaos. Inside ARK-9, alarms screamed. Isla was already in motion, tossing weapons from unlocked vaults to soldiers barely 2 minutes awake. The Guardian moved like a storm through the confusion, calibrating kinetic rifles, activating shield drones, and shouting orders like muscle memory. Defensive protocols online, Warden called. Auto turrets at entry points. Shield generators charged to 76%. Structural collapse imminent in 7 minutes. Hold the outer wall, the Guardian barked. We fall back in phases. Another strike landed, closer this time. The blast wave knocked 3 of the newly awakened off their feet. A soldier screamed, clutching a broken leg. Ayla grabbed him, dragged him behind cover, and tossed a med pack his way without missing a beat. "Tell me this place has a tunnel," she snapped at the Guardian. "It's Earth," he said. "We always dig deep." He slammed his fist into the emergency console. A section of floor in the main chamber split apart, revealing a metal staircase spiraling down into darkness. The old escape tunnels, forgotten by time, missed by council scans. "Everyone move," Ayla ordered. "Leave nothing behind. We're ghosts now." As the last soldier descended, the Guardian remained. He activated the last failsafe on the console. "Detonation in 90 seconds, Warden confirmed. He looked around once more at the place that had kept Earth's hope frozen. Then he followed them into the dark. Beneath the mountains, the survivors marched through damp tunnels carved during the old resistance. Crude markings lined the walls, directions, warnings, old code words scratched by desperate hands long dead. The Guardian walked up front, silent. Ayla beside him, breathing hard. "We need to find a stronghold, somewhere to regroup. This many bodies can't stay underground long." "I know a place," he said, "but it's a long way from here, and it's not going to welcome us back easily." "Where?" "Atlantica." She stopped in her tracks. "You're insane. That place was a myth even before the fall." He turned. "It wasn't a myth. I built it." Far above Earth, aboard the council ship Vireth's Hand, Admiral Tholos studied the charred satellite image of ARK-9. His lips curled in satisfaction. "Facility destroyed. No life signs remain." His second-in-command shifted nervously. "What if they escaped underground? The human Guardian? We have confirmation it was him." Tholos sneered. "A relic. One soldier doesn't matter." But even as he said it, another officer ran into the bridge, pale with panic. "Sir, 4 outposts gone dark. Drone squads wiped out. We're losing troops in the Amazon and Sahara sectors. It's spreading." "Impossible," Tholos snapped. "We wiped them out. We burned them." "Yes, sir," the officer stammered. "But they're fighting like they remember." In the tunnels, the survivors finally reached a massive steel door, sealed with layers of old AI locks, symbols from a lost era. The Guardian placed his palm on the reader. Warden's voice chimed in. "Access granted. Welcome home." With a heavy groan, the door slid open, revealing a vast chamber of glowing blue lights, dormant mechs, armored suits, cryo-weapons, and rows upon rows of unmarked caskets. Ayla stepped forward, eyes wide. "What the hell is this?" the Guardian answered quietly. "The real ARK insurance policy, humanity's clause, hidden for the right moment." She walked to one of the caskets and wiped away frost. Inside, another soldier sleeping. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. "How many?" she whispered. 2,000, he said. Ayla's voice broke. "They could turn the tide." "They will," he replied, "but only if we wake them in time." She turned to him. "Then we stop running. We make our stand." He nodded. "Tell the stars," he said, voice low with fire, "that Earth is awake." The hangar was alive with forgotten power. Blue light shimmered across the sleeping giants. Exosuits the size of tanks, lined up like silent sentinels. The Guardian moved through them with quiet reverence. Each one had a name etched into its armor. Not serial numbers. Names. Soldiers who had volunteered to become more than human, to become Earth's vengeance, back when the stars turned their backs. Ayla watched him activate the first suit. "You built all this?" she asked. "I buried all this," he replied. "After the fall, when the Council's extermination squads swept through our last strongholds, we knew we couldn't win head-on. So we went underground, left traps, woke ghosts, built weapons not for then, but for now. He turned to her, armor lit by the rising glow of awakened machines. This was never about surviving. It was about waiting for the right moment. She nodded. And now we stop waiting. Warden's voice echoed through the chamber. Revival protocols engaged, cryo units online, estimated full battalion deployment, 16 hours. Too long, the Guardian muttered. The Council won't give us that. Ayla pulled up the old satellite links. Static. But something moved beyond it. Faint signals, distorted patterns, Earth's old orbital network, flickering like ghosts in the dark. She tapped into one of the dormant nodes. Got something, she whispered. Signal out of Kenya. Resistance cell, encrypted but active. The Guardian's eyes narrowed. Impossible. She looked at him. Or maybe not. Maybe we're not alone anymore. Half a world away, in the ruins of Nairobi, Commander Talon Nkuru watched the flickering map projected from his salvaged uplink. Drones showed Council patrols sweeping through what was once the city's heart. Old AI scrap littered the streets, and mutated flora had consumed concrete. But deep in the catacombs, under a marketplace that hadn't seen trade in 400 years, Talon's people prepared for war. He stared at the glowing red dot pulsing on his map. A signal, military grade, pre-fall frequency, Earthborn. He turned to his lieutenant. Send a message back, 5 words. What do you want to say? Talon smiled. Earth lives, resistance breathes, ready. Back in Atlantica, Ayla received the message with trembling hands. She looked up at the Guardian. They're alive. They've been fighting all this time. He let out a long breath. So it begins. They stood together before the awakening army. Suits came online. Lights surged across the floor. Men and women in cryo units stirred, muscles twitching. Their minds, still full of ash and blood, were being downloaded with the truth. What had happened, what was coming, and what they had to do. The Guardian lifted a plasma rifle and turned to the nearest suit. He climbed in, the armor sealing around him with a thunderous hiss. Blue lines pulsed through the plates. He moved, slowly, then faster, like he had never stopped. Warden, he said, broadcast open comms to all Earth-based frequencies. Civilian, military, resistance, dormant, AI. I want everyone listening. Channel open. He stepped forward, voice like steel and thunder. This is the Guardian of Earth. If you hear this, you are not alone. The Council has returned. They want to finish what they started. But we are not broken. We are not buried. We are the last of the last, and we remember. If you've got fire left in your blood, weapons in your hands, rage in your heart, then rise. This is our world, and it's time we make them bleed forever setting foot on it. The message ended. Across the planet, in bunkers and jungles, in ruins and data nodes, people heard it. And they answered. The hangar thrummed with an energy Ayla hadn't felt in years, raw, rising, and terrifying in its promise. The Guardian stood among ancient war machines, their armor worn, their cores blinking alive for the first time in centuries. Dust and silence had filled this place for generations. Now it felt like a storm about to crack open the heavens. These weren't just machines. These were remnants of Earth's fury. Suits that had once turned the tide of battles lost to history. Weapons once deemed too brutal, too uncontrollable. Now, they were Earth's last hope. 76 Titan suits online, Warden confirmed, his voice echoing off steel walls. Cryo-resuscitation sequence for battalion units in progress. First wave of soldiers will regain motor function in 30 minutes. The Guardian adjusted the gauntlet of one of the Titans, whispering something Ayla couldn't hear. Maybe a name. Maybe a memory. Then he turned to her, visor dimmed. his real face showing beneath cracked armor. "They called us extinct," he said quietly. "But extinction's just another word for resting when it comes to humans." Ayla nodded, jaw clenched. "Then let's wake the others." She moved to one of the caskets and wiped the frost from the glass. Inside, a woman with streaks of silver hair lay still, her name etched above. Colonel Zaya Mbeki. Ayla remembered her. A legend during the Pacific sieges. They said she once held a Council Dread Trooper squad at bay with a knife and a shoulder wound. Now she slept like the dead. But her vitals were steady. "I'll bring them back," Warden confirmed. "But it will take time. 16 hours for all combat personnel to be reanimated and rearmed." "We don't have 16 hours, the Guardian snapped. "The Council's orbitals have already started triangulating surface radiation. They'll trace it here." "Then we buy them time," Ayla said. "We fight with what we've got." She tapped into an old interface on the wall, flickering, glitchy, barely alive. But it pulsed with something familiar. Earth's old satellite, uplinks. She ran a sweep through every global relay the Resistance had buried before the fall. Most were gone, others offered only silence. But then, something. A signal. Faint but clean. Military code. Frequency buried in Council encryption. "Kenya," she muttered. "There's someone out there, broadcasting through the ruins." The Guardian leaned over her shoulder. Someone smart, using enemy distortion fields to piggyback the message. She decrypted it slowly, fingers trembling. It wasn't long. Just 5 words. "Earth lives. Resistance breathes. Ready." Ayla exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. "They never stopped fighting," she whispered. "They're still out there," Warden confirmed with a chirp. "Source traced to Nairobi. Active resistance unit. Estimated strength, 40 to 70 combatants. Commander, Talon Nkuru." "Talon?" the Guardian said, surprised. "He should be dead." "Well, he's not," Ayla replied. "And he just called." Half a world away, beneath Nairobi's shattered skyline, Commander Talon Nkuru studied a crude holographic map projected from a salvaged uplink. Drones painted a grim picture. Council patrols crawling through once sacred ground, their armor gleaming like parasites. His people, what few remained, hid in the sewer veins and collapsed catacombs of the old world. He looked up as his second-in-command, a boy barely 20, jogged into the room. "They responded," the boy said. Talon raised an eyebrow. "Who?" The kid grinned. "Atlantica." The name hit like thunder. "No one said that name in 400 years, Talon whispered. The boy nodded. "Well, they said something back. It was short." He activated the playback. A deep voice, metallic, cold, and powerful, spoke across static. "This is the Guardian of Earth." The rest didn't need repeating. Talon stood slowly, every scar and bone aching, but his smile grew like fire. "Tell them we're coming." Back in Atlantica, Ayla stood beside the Guardian as he faced the awakening soldiers. One by one, the cryopods hissed open. Men and women coughed, gasped, and blinked against the harsh light. Each one had faced death centuries ago, and now they were reborn into another war. "This is our army," Ayla said, eyes burning, "and we're not alone." The Guardian nodded. "Then it's time," he said. "Broadcast me, all channels." Warden's systems whirred to life. A moment later, his voice thundered across Earth. "This is the Guardian of Earth. If you hear this, you are not alone. The Council has returned. They want to finish what they started. But we are not broken. We are not buried. We are the last of the last, and we remember. If you've got fire left in your blood, weapons in your hands, rage in your heart, then rise. This is our world, and it's time we make them bleed forever setting foot on it." And somewhere, far above, Council fleets paused, because Earth had just whispered back, "Come get us." The storm rose from Earth like a wrathful scream. In low orbit, the Council's observation fleet floated silent, unaware of the ancient fury stirring below. Scout ships scanned continents, detecting what they thought were only geothermal surges and tectonic anomalies. They saw heat, but not the heart. They saw radiation, but not rage. They had grown arrogant, believing humanity broken beyond recovery. But now Earth's voice was war, and the sky was about to burn. From the depths of Atlantica, massive electromagnetic pulses burst upward, tamed chaos wrapped in ancient tech. Council drones blinked offline mid-air, their circuits fried before they could scream. One of the orbital defense cruisers lurched, lights flickering, alarms blaring as systems died without warning. "What's happening down there?" barked Commander Rethkal aboard the Varnaxis, the largest of the orbital fleet. "Localized energy signatures increasing exponentially," his science officer reported. "But this can't be natural. It's targeted. It's warfare." "From Earth?" "Number from something buried beneath Earth." Rethkal snarled. "Send everything. All atmospheric hunters. I want that surge crushed." But they were already too late. The Guardian led the first charge. In his Titan suit, cloaked with plasma-reactive plates and humming with centuries-old vengeance, he launched from the inner Earth toward the sky. Others followed. 20, then 50. Then the full might of the resurrected battalion. Isla rode just behind him, piloting a sleek skirmisher mech with rail cannons mounted to its shoulders. Beside her flew 2 drones encoded with Warden's AI, now weaponized for autonomous sabotage. The Resistance had upgraded while sleeping. Above them, streaks of fire crossed the sky, Council hunter ships descending like vultures. The old battleships still held power. Their energy weapons could level cities. But they had never met an enemy like this before, one that had nothing left to lose. The Guardian locked onto the first target, a heavy scout cruiser, and activated his suit's boosters. His armor screamed through the upper atmosphere as he slammed into its hull with the force of a meteor. Metal shrieked. Enemy troops scrambled inside. The Guardian didn't hesitate. Plasma blades ignited along his arms, slicing through the hull like paper. Inside the ship, Council soldiers barely had time to aim before he tore them apart in a whirlwind of heat and fury. Isla's skirmisher swooped in behind him, unloading twin rail shots that tore through the exposed engines of a second vessel. It spun in the sky, crashing in a flaming spiral into the sea. Down below, in Nairobi, Commander Talon's forces surged into the open, armed with ancient pulse rifles and reverse-engineered alien tech. They joined with resistance cells from Egypt, Tanzania, and the Congo, all awakened by the Guardian's call. Skirmishes lit the African continent like wildfires, each one another crack in the Council's grip. "Warden," the Guardian called through the haze of fire and debris. "Status on the orbital disruptor?" 83% charged, Warden replied. "Time to atmospheric burst, 3 minutes. Then let's keep them occupied." Council carriers loomed above them, massive, lumbering, armed to the teeth. One opened fire, scattering the sky with plasma bursts, annihilating part of the Earth below. Trees vanished, buildings melted, dozens of human mechs went dark. But the Guardian didn't flinch. He activated his emergency boosters, streaked toward the carrier's main cannon, and fired a plasma anchor that embedded deep into its underbelly. With a roar, he reeled himself up and drilled straight into the engine core. Inside, Council engineers tried to overload the core before he could reach it. They failed. He left a bomb in his wake and dove out of the breach as the ship exploded in a brilliant starburst over the Pacific. Back in orbit, Commander Rethkal watched in disbelief. "One of our carriers Destroyed? He whispered. His officer nodded, pale with fear. And not by our enemies from the stars, by humans. No, Rethkal hissed, not humans, monsters pretending to be dead. Then the disruptor fired. From deep in Atlantica, an ancient weapon, hidden since the last days of the fall, launched its payload. It wasn't a missile, not in the traditional sense. It was a concentrated graviton pulse, designed to scramble the laws of physics in a localized zone. The orbit above Earth bent, ships tilted, electronics died, and in the span of 7 seconds, over a third of the Council fleet lost power and began spiraling down toward the planet they had once ruled. On the ground, Ayla stood beside the Guardian on the cliff of a shattered ridge, watching the Council ships burn their way through the clouds. She turned to him. We're winning. He didn't smile. Not yet. This is only the first blood. He looked up at the dark heavens. The Council will send more. This was a scout fleet. The true armada waits beyond Mars. She gritted her teeth. Then we hit them before they get here. He finally nodded. Next stop, the stars. They left Earth in silence, but their fury echoed across the stars. The Guardian stood aboard the Revenant, an ancient human warship that hadn't seen the void in 4 centuries. Dug out from the crust beneath the Andes, repaired with hybrid tech scavenged from fallen Council wreckage, and reforged in the fire of purpose. It was more than just a vessel. It was Earth's vengeance made metal. Around it, dozens of retrofitted Council cruisers, commandeered during the orbital battles, formed a loose fleet. They were not elegant. They were not many, but they carried warriors unlike any the galaxy had seen before. Humans who had tasted defeat and buried it in steel. Resistance fighters, ancient soldiers, and awakened ghosts of war. And leading them all, the Guardian. Warden's voice rang through the command deck. Trajectory locked. Destination, Council High Throne. Estimated arrival, 16 hours. Ayla adjusted her arm-mounted neural interface and leaned against a cold bulkhead. 16 hours to either victory or extinction. The Guardian said nothing. He stood staring out into the abyss at the faint twinkle that marked the heart of Council space. Ayla crossed the floor, her voice quieter now. We don't have to do this. We could disappear. Hide. Rebuild. He looked at her, eyes hardened from centuries of battle. And let them rebuild. Let them come again. Number they will never stop until we burn the throne they worship to ash. She nodded. Then we end it. The Council High Throne floated in orbit above the gas giant Arizon, surrounded by thousands of warships, its architecture so massive it could be seen from the planet's surface. It was less a station, more a city forged in gold and arrogance. This was where the Grand Tribunal ruled, where sentences were passed, wars commanded, and species like humans were declared inferior. Now it trembled. Because the Revenant arrived in silence, then broadcast a single, final message. We are the forgotten. We are the flame. This is humanity's judgment. Then Earth struck. Warden launched the first wave. Hacked Council drones now under human control, zipping through defense grids and detonating in shield junctions. Mech units in drop pods followed, slamming into the station's surface like divine hammers. Resistance fighters poured out, armed with fusion blades, quantum disruptors, and sheer human rage. Ayla led the infiltration team through the underbelly of the throne. Their goal: disable the central power core, cutting off shields and exposing the Council Tribunal's inner sanctum. It wasn't easy. Council guards, elite and augmented, met them with precision strikes. They were faster, cleaner, more evolved. But they weren't ready for Ayla's brutality. for the raw, messy chaos of a human brawler who'd survived genocide. She gutted one with a plasma spike, shot another mid-dash, and then shoved a detonator into a third's mouth before kicking him back down a corridor. "You freaks talk about order," she growled, "but Earth taught me how to break gods." Meanwhile, in orbit, the Guardian tore through cruisers in a Titan-class void suit enhanced with wormhole jump capability. He blinked between ships, appearing inside command decks and ripping through bridge crews. His armor glowed red-hot from constant battle, but he pressed forward, unstoppable. Inside the council chamber, the Grand Tribunal gathered in panic. 11 robed figures, some over 600 years old, their veins pulsing with gene augments and self-righteousness. "This cannot be," one hissed. "They were supposed to be extinct." A heavy thud shattered the chamber doors. The Guardian stepped inside, his armor smoking, blade dragging across the floor. "We were asleep," he said. "Not gone." One of the tribunal members raised a hand to summon guards, but a rail shot punched through his skull before he could speak. Ayla entered behind the Guardian, bloodied and grinning. "Your empire ends today," she said. The tribunal tried to flee. They screamed commands, summoned drones, activated security systems. It didn't matter. The humans didn't come for negotiation. They came to erase the past. The Guardian walked to the central dais, where the Council's emblem glowed. With a single strike, he shattered it. Warden activated the final protocol. Deep within the station's core, explosive charges detonated. The Revenant, in orbit, opened a wormhole back to Earth. Ayla and the Guardian ran. As they leapt into the final evac craft, the Council's throne erupted in light, a supernova of metal and fire swallowing the greatest symbol of alien power. The Council died not with a scream, but with a silence Earth had been denied for centuries. Later, back on Earth, the skies were clear. Humanity had won, not by negotiation, not by mercy, but by becoming what the galaxy feared, survivors with teeth. Ayla stood on the ruined steps of an old city, now being rebuilt. Children ran past her. Life had returned. The Guardian stood beside her, silent as always. "You ever think we went too far?" she asked. He stared at the stars. "Number." "They started the fire," he said. "We just finished it." And far above, the stars shimmered like they finally understood what it meant to challenge Earth.